This is Justin DeLoretto, aka Mooch. I was a chapter president of the Mongols Motorcycle Club and a member of the Mongols Motorcycle Club.
Justin Mooch DeLoretto spent more than a decade inside the Mongols Motorcycle Club. Not on the margins, but at its core. He rose through the ranks, served as a chapter president, and carried the responsibility of leadership in one of the most scrutinized outlaw motorcycle clubs in the world. What he learned, he says, is something most members understand but rarely say aloud. Getting in is a choice. Getting out is not. When DeLoretto finally began speaking publicly about his experiences, I left the club in 2022. Little Dave, the national president at the time, had recently been removed from office. Him and his wife were going through some relationship issues, and she had recorded a call where it kind of sounded like he had a relationship with an ATF agent, and she had sent it to other members and they used it to make it look like he potentially could have been an informant. It wasn't to glorify the lifestyle. It was to explain the part most outsiders never see. What happens when loyalty, identity, and obligation collide with real life, legal pressure, and the desire to leave? Life inside the Mongols. Before the Mongols, DeLoretto was already searching for belonging. His own family life lacked stability, structure, and emotional security, virtues he would later find within the confines of a much different family, one made of chosen brothers unrelated by blood. He grew up around street culture, later immersing himself in the hardcore punk scene, environments that valued toughness, loyalty, and clear identity. Motorcycle clubs, he has said, felt like a natural extension of that world. I was always looking for structure and family, he explains, something bigger than me. He entered motorcycle culture in the late 2000s, eventually joining the Mongols Motorcycle Club after time spent in other clubs. The Mongols Motorcycle Club is an outlaw or one-enter motorcycle club founded in Southern California in 1969. Known for its strict hierarchy, strong internal loyalty, and long-running rivalries with other major clubs, particularly the Hells Angels, one-enter clubs define themselves as living outside mainstream society and its rules. The term comes from a statement made after a 1947 biker riot in Hollister, California, when the American Motorcyclist Association reportedly said that 99% of motorcyclists were law-abiding, leaving one who were not, a label those clubs later adopted as a badge of identity and defiance. Over the next 14 years, Mooch rose through the ranks, becoming a chapter president in multiple states and later serving in regional leadership roles. That ascent came with power, but also relentless pressure. Once you're in leadership, you don't just represent yourself anymore. DeLoretto has said every decision you make affects everyone under you. And there were many under him. The Mongols, like other outlaw motorcycle clubs, operate under a strict hierarchy. Newcomers don't simply sign up. Hopeful recruits are usually introduced through someone already in the club. They might hang around at events or rides, get to know full-patched members, and slowly build a reputation as someone who's reliable and loyal. That's called being a hang-around. From there, a candidate might officially become a prospect, which is a probationary status that can last 1 to 3 years, during which they're expected to prove themselves through tasks most outsiders would never see. Effort, time, and loyalty are the currency of this world. Prospects make themselves available for anything the club needs. Guarding bikes, running errands, showing up for rides, sticking with the group through long nights and tough conditions. You name it. Prospects have no voice, no vote, and no margin for error. You're always on, DeLoretto explains. You don't get days off from being loyal. They earn the right to wear the Mongol symbols, the leather vest adorned with the Mongol warrior patch, and the unmistakable one diamond. Statements of identity, allegiance, and status. Inside, brotherhood is talked about like it's the closest thing to family most members have ever had. There's an ethos of loyalty, mutual support, and protection. A ride-or-die mentality that's been part of outlaw motorcycle culture since its earliest days. It's a community that promises unwavering support during life's ups and downs, tough love during mistakes, and shared glory on big rides and club events. But that loyalty comes at a price. The club doesn't fit into your life. DeLoretto says, your life fits into the club. Miss too much, hesitate too often, or question leadership, and your commitment is quietly re-evaluated. Speaking up can get you kicked out. There is only one way to ensure your spot in the club. Keep your heads down and do exactly what you're told. Unspoken lines you don't cross. Officially, the Mongols have bylaws. Unofficially, they have something stronger. Expectation. Some rules are explicit. Don't steal from brothers. Don't disrespect another member's partner. Don't bring unnecessary law enforcement attention. Others are implied, but enforced just as firmly. There are things you're never told outright. DeLoretto says, you just learn them by watching what happens to the guy who crosses the line. Silence is one of those rules. So is obedience during conflict. So is putting the club ahead of personal relationships, careers, and even freedom. The Mother Chapter is a central authority that sets club-wide policies and oversees the entire organization. This isn't a fantasy title. It's an actual governing body made up of national officers led by a national president. There's a chapter president, a vice president, a sergeant-at-arms, a secretary or treasurer, and often a road captain who organizes rides and logistics. These roles carry weight, authority, and responsibility in how chapter affairs are handled. A layer most outsiders don't see is the financial and organizational obligations. Each member pays monthly dues and local chapters send a portion of those funds back to the mother chapter. Officially, the club says these dues go towards club operations, but critics and some law enforcement reports suggest they also help cover legal defenses when members run afoul of the law. And in DeLoretto's case, this happened quite often. As law enforcement pressure increased throughout the 2000s, that pressure intensified. Members assumed they were being watched, informants were feared, trust became conditional. You start living like everyone could be a threat, he recalls. That changes how you think. DeLoretto's turning point came after his arrest in Oregon in 2008. He was convicted on misdemeanor charges, including menacing, reckless endangerment, and reckless driving following an incident involving investigators. The sentence included jail time and 5 years of probation. But the probation conditions were what truly changed everything. He was prohibited from associating with Mongols members, wearing club colors, and participating in club activities. He would have accepted the conditions, albeit begrudgingly, if they hadn't extended to the person who mattered the most to him in the world, his twin brother Jeremy, an active member of the Mongols himself. The authorities were worried DeLoretto would carry on illegal affairs through Jeremy and prohibited him from contacting his twin. They basically told me I had to choose. DeLoretto explains the law or the club. That's when it really hit me. This life takes more than it gives and it doesn't care who it costs you. This time he was only in for 5 years. But what if he ended up in prison for life next time just to protect his brothers? Would he be expected to sacrifice everything for the club? Would the club sacrifice everything for him? He didn't know the answer. And that's when Justin DeLoretto decided it was time to leave the Mongols behind. Being out bad, the consequences of leaving. In outlaw motorcycle culture, there are different ways to leave. Some exits are quiet, neutral, even quietly respected. A medical issue, age, or circumstances that allow a member to fade into the background. Justin DeLoretto's departure was not one of those. He describes his exit as being put out bad. Out BB means you don't just lose your patch, DeLoretto explains. You lose your protection, your status, your people, everything. In practical terms, being out bad isn't announced with a press release or formal decree. There's no single moment where the door slams shut. Instead, the separation unfolds through silence. Phone calls stop getting returned. Messages go unanswered. Invitations disappear. Names that were once spoken casually become something people avoid saying out loud. Former brothers stop calling. DeLoretto says allied clubs keep their distance. One day you're somebody, the next day you're a liability. The detachment is deliberate. In a culture where loyalty is currency and association carries risk, distancing from someone who has left under bad terms is a form of self-preservation. Remaining members don't necessarily need to threaten or confront you. The absence itself does the work. DeLoretto wasn't the first Mongol to ever leave the club. One of the most notorious departures in Mongols history came long before Mooch's time. Ruben Doc Kavossos, once the international president of the Mongols Motorcycle Club, was voted out of the club in August 2008 by his own members, who believed he had betrayed their trust and was jeopardizing the club's stability. Kavassos's exit from the club was followed by dramatic consequences. Federal law enforcement, after a massive undercover and surveillance investigation, arrested him and dozens of Mongols members later that year in Operation Black Rain, a coordinated multi-state sweep targeting alleged racketeering and other criminal activity tied to the club. He eventually pleaded guilty to racketeering charges and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. DeLoretto didn't fall from grace in such a visible way. For him, the exit from the club was quieter, more subtle. And yet, the loss was almost existential. For more than a decade, his identity had been reinforced daily by the club, the structure, the rituals, the responsibilities, and the constant presence of other members. Losing that meant losing the framework that had organized his adult life. You don't realize how much of yourself is wrapped up in the club until it's gone, he says. But if being out bad severed his ties quietly, publishing a memoir ensured they would never be repaired. In 2023, DeLoretto released The Ride of My Life. From street gangs to motorcycle clubs to social worker, a candid account of his journey into and out of outlaw motorcycle club culture. The book avoided sensational crime stories or score settling, instead focusing on the psychological pull of brotherhood, hierarchy, and identity, and the emotional cost of leaving them behind. I didn't write the book to tear anyone down, DeLoretto says. I wrote it because people deserve to know what this life really costs. Inside the Mongols, however, intent mattered less than principle. Speaking publicly, especially in print, violated one of the most deeply ingrained expectations of outlaw club life. You don't talk about internal matters with outsiders ever. The reaction from other Mongols was swift, even if largely unspoken. No formal statements were issued. No public condemnations were made. Instead, the detachment hardened. Members who had already gone quiet stayed silent. Others who might have maintained limited contact disappeared completely. Mutual acquaintances stopped responding. Doors that were already closed were effectively locked. The book made it permanent. DeLoretto admits whatever gray area existed before that was gone. Within the culture, writing a memoir signaled finality. It marked him not just as someone who left, but as someone who had stepped outside the code entirely. Even members who privately agreed with parts of his story could no longer be seen engaging with him without risking their own standing. The consequences of questionable choices, such as leaving the club, are enforced collectively, not individually. There's no need for threats or violence. The system relies on shared understanding. People stop answering because they're supposed to. People keep their distance because association has consequences. People don't defend you because doing so could raise questions about their loyalty. It's not personal. DeLoretto explains it's cultural. That culture rewards conformity and punishes deviation, especially when deviation becomes public. Over time, the absence becomes normalized. Life inside the club continues without you, and you're expected to do the same alone. Losing an identity, not just a club. In his book, DeLoretto writes extensively about what happens after the patch is gone, the emotional vacuum that follows the loss of status, purpose, and belonging. He describes identity fusion, the phenomenon where personal identity becomes inseparable from group identity, and the disorientation that follows when that group disappears. When the club is gone, you're left asking, "Who am I without it?" he says. That question, he argues, is what keeps many members from ever leaving, even when the cost becomes unbearable. For DeLoretto, answering it meant accepting permanent separation from the world that once defined him. The book didn't just tell his story. It closed the door on returning to silence, ambiguity, or partial acceptance. I knew once I told the truth publicly, there was no going back, he says. But I also knew I couldn't keep carrying it alone. Being out bad meant losing a brotherhood, but it also forced him to build an identity that existed beyond it. And in a culture where loyalty is everything, choosing honesty over silence came with a price he understood from the start. Rebuilding didn't happen overnight. When the structure disappears, you realize how much of yourself was wrapped up in it. DeLoretto says he returned to school, earned a Master of Social Work, and now works with at-risk youth and adults navigating trauma, violence, and identity loss. I still believe in accountability, loyalty, and brotherhood, he explains. I just believe they should build people, not trap them. Today, Justin DeLoretto's life belongs to him alone, not to any club. He speaks openly through interviews, podcasts, and his own platform, offering rare insight into a world most people only see through myth. He can take time off whenever he feels like, doesn't have to prove himself to his brothers anymore, and is not required to put anyone else before himself. He is free at last, even if that freedom comes with isolation and loneliness at times. Despite everything, DeLoretto doesn't deny what the Mongols gave him: belonging, purpose, and structure. But he's clear about the trade-off. The club will give you everything, he says, as long as you give it everything back. Leaving, he insists, isn't weakness. It's reckoning. And in the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, that reckoning comes with a cost most people never imagine until it's too late. Now that you know how they operate, would you even care to join any of the outlaw motorcycle clubs? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next.